We are now joined exclusively by the Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem. Secretary, really busy 24 hours for you. Thank you very much for being here. People are waking up and they are wondering two things. Am I going to lose power from the storm? And what the heck happened with the Border Patrol agents shooting this guy in Minneapolis? We will get to that. But first, with this storm, what are the folks here at FEMA's Nerve Center telling you about how things have played out overnight?
Well, this is the National Response Coordination Center. So we actually have many agencies embedded here that are responding to local communities and states as they get through this winter storm. We knew for several days ahead of time this would be significant. It would impact about 40 states. It would include not just snow, but the damaging ice that could be catastrophic for people losing power by taking down power lines, impacting tree branches that would cause a lot of damage. So we're seeing about 1 million people without power, although all the local communities and states are responding with repair crews, all coordinated together to make sure that everybody gets help as soon as they possibly can.
And the threat from power outages, if the storm has gone, is the threat past, or do people still need to worry tonight about branches freezing and power lines getting dropped on?
The situation with this storm is pretty unique just because it's going to stay cold for a period of time. So this ice that has fallen will keep those lines heavy, even if they haven't gone down immediately. For several days, we're going to have below freezing temperatures that will make sure that if we get a little bit of wind or we get some stress on those lines, they still continue to could potentially lose power. So we're going to continue to monitor that. FEMA coordinates that through the state. All the governors I've talked to multiple times, and we've been working with them and their emergency management directors to make sure they have the equipment that they need. In disasters like this, it's always the local leadership team that responds. The state manages the disaster, and then FEMA comes in and supports. And that's what's happening in these states where those disasters have been declared and those emergencies have been declared, and we're getting them the help as soon as they need it.
And with this storm, have there been any surprises, or has it played out about how you guys thought?
It's played out about how we have thought. Some of the states have really upgraded their infrastructure since their last disaster. If you remember, Peter, Texas got hit hard with an ice storm several years ago. And since then, they spent a lot of time and resources building up their infrastructure and their grid. So they're doing better this time around. And many of these states, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, that are struggling right now, they have agreements with surrounding states to get utility crews in there right away and getting people back online.
And I want to switch gears to the other big story that you were right in the middle of. Federal officers have their hands full in Minnesota right now. One officer had his finger bitten clean off by an agitator yesterday. There are some pretty troubling photos of that online if anybody wants to look. Have you heard from any of the Democratic leadership in Minnesota about that? Tim Walz, Jacob Frey?
No, they haven't expressed any concern for injuries to our officers. And that's been going on for weeks. These are not just agitators anymore, they're violent protests. In fact, the state and the city of Minneapolis abandoned this area in downtown Minneapolis because they couldn't control the situation by the amount of people that have come in just trying to disrupt and impede law enforcement operations. And, you know, frankly, this didn't turn violent until we uncovered the fraud in Minneapolis. We were there, ICE and CBP have been there and operating for years in Minneapolis. We saw the violence start to happen when the fraud became uncovered of the billions of dollars that was stolen from American taxpayers under the leadership of Governor Walz and Mayor Frey.
President Trump is saying, this is a part of a Truth Social, the mayor and the governor are inciting insurrection with their pompous, dangerous, and arrogant rhetoric. How close is President Trump to invoking the Insurrection Act?
You know, President Trump just wants to keep people safe, and he's applying the law and wanting to go out there and go after not just terrorists that we know were led into this country by the Biden administration, also dangerous criminals that, especially in Minneapolis, what we've been targeting is sexual predators, people who've been trafficking children. That's what this operation has been focused on, getting illegal people in this country that have been involved in that criminal activity. And then when the fraud was uncovered as well, we saw a resistance in Minneapolis like we haven't seen anywhere else in this country. In fact, encouraged by the governor at press conferences to go out and take to the streets and to resist law enforcement. It really is irresponsibility that we haven't seen out of someone in any other state.
So, Insurrection Act on the table?
You know, it's up to the president. He has the constitutional right to do that. He certainly has considered it. We've had discussions. We'll see what the best choice is to make sure that law and order is followed, but also that we're keeping people safe.
And it is early, we know, in this investigation into the shooting death of Alex Preddy. but I want to have you walk our audience through what exactly you know. So you said last night, it looks like a situation where an individual arrived at the scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement. Did he say, I'm going to kill you, or did he leave a note? How do you know that was his intent?
You know, part of this investigation will be hearing from those agents and officers and people on the ground. But we do know that he came to that scene and impeded a law enforcement operation, which is against federal law. It's a felony. When he did that, interacting with those agents, when they tried to get him to disengage, he became aggressive and resisted them throughout that process. These officers used their training, followed their protocols, and were in fear of their lives and the people around them. And that's how this tragedy unfolded, and we hope we never see it again. It grieves me to think about what his family is going through, but it also grieves me what's happening to these law enforcement officers every day out on the streets with the violence that they face.
Because you mentioned the family, they have a statement out now where they say they're angry and that Alex was just trying to protect a woman who was pushed down by ice and pepper sprayed. But they also talked to the Associated Press, and they said, we had this discussion with him 2 weeks ago or so, go ahead and protest, but do not engage, do not do anything stupid, basically. So what is your message this morning to Alex Pretty's parents?
Just that I'm grieved for them. I truly am. I can't even imagine losing a child, and I can't imagine a tragic situation. We can't have individuals that are impeding law enforcement operations and then showing up with guns and weapons and no ID and confronting law enforcement like that is one of the reasons that we see situations like this unfold. I think everybody can learn from this situation. I'm grateful for law enforcement to put their lives on the line every day to go out there on the streets and try to bring criminals to justice and protect the public. And we'll continue to make sure the right thing is done, this investigation is completed, and that we continue to go forward and we enforce the law and apply it equally to everybody in the country.
What is the line? Where does it go from peaceful protest, I have a First Amendment right to do that, to I'm going to get arrested protesting, to I'm going to get shot to death?
We have clearly from the very beginning followed the exact same process and protocols that have been implemented this entire administration and that the previous administration followed and has gone on in law enforcement interactions for years. You cannot impede a law enforcement investigation and operation. When an officer tells you to back off and gives you orders, you should comply and explain. You shouldn't show up with weapons then no ID and no indication of how they're going to be used. And that aggressive interaction, laying hands on law enforcement officers, clearly is a crime, and it is something that should not be acceptable.
Because you mentioned the protocol, there is an angle of the video that we've been playing all morning where it shows an officer removing a weapon either from Alex Pretty's waistband or a holster. And he walks away with the weapon before officers start shooting. It appears that Alex Pretty was disarmed. If he was disarmed, is it the protocol to use deadly force?
And that's all part of this investigation. Every video will be analyzed, everything will be looked at. And that's part of the answers that I can't speak to every single thing that those officers thought, but this happened in seconds. They clearly feared for their lives and took action to defend themselves and the people around them. If you watch that and you listen to those videos, you can hear someone yelling, gun, 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 and those agents and officers reacted to that. So as this investigation goes forward, all of that will be analyzed.
There are a lot of stories this morning. Gun experts are saying the gun that he had, the Sig Sauer P329 millimeter, has a reputation, according to multiple lawsuits, of accidental discharges. Have you been briefed about the possibility that an ICE or a Border Patrol officer accidentally discharged this gun?
I know the investigation's ongoing, and they'll continue to do that. I don't conduct that investigation within the agency, and outside agencies will continue to do that, and we'll get the facts.
Separate from the specific investigation, we know that Alex Pretty, according to officials in Minnesota, was legally a concealed carry permit holder. He had his gun legally. Is your message to people who are concealed carry permits that if they're going to go to a protest, they should leave their gun in the car?
My message to individuals is don't go impede law enforcement operations. That's not legal. You're breaking the law when you do that. It's also breaking the law to concealed carry in Minnesota without an ID on you. And you shouldn't be laying hands on law enforcement and getting in their faces and trying to stop them from conducting their work. All of that is part of protocol, but it also is the law. And when people are in violation for the law, there's consequences for that.
Last night, our reporter in Minneapolis, Steve Harrigan, was out there monitoring everything that happened afterwards. And he said that there were a bunch of protesters in matching shiny yellow vests who basically took over the crime scene and they were directing traffic. It's very, very organized. Have you guys figured out yet who is organizing these protesters? Who is paying for them to be there, to stay out in the cold for something like a matching outfit?
Well, Peter, I want to remind you, these aren't just protesters. These are violent rioters. When you have local police, city police, and the state police that have to abandon an area of their community because they can't control the situation and they don't have citizens who will listen to them or honor law enforcement, that's not protesters. That's a violent riot, and it's out of control in Minneapolis. We don't know who is funding them, but there are investigations going into it. I know the Department of Justice is. I know that the Attorney General in Minnesota, the governor in Minnesota, and Mayor Frey, they all have confirmed that they've received subpoenas, that they will have to appear in front of a federal grand jury for a criminal investigation. I think that should be indicative of the fact that perhaps their leadership is not isolated from a lot of the corruption that we've seen throughout the state.
And there are so many different angles of the video. How quickly can we expect information about this investigation?
I think the information is consistently coming out when it's appropriate, when investigators deem that it is something that they can release that will give answers to people. That's exactly what President Trump and his administration want. We want transparency for the American people, and that's one of the reasons why you've seen our Border Patrol and our ICE officers out there working with the community and consistently asking the governor, consistently asking the mayor, please work with us. All we ask is that before you turn violent criminals out on the streets, let us know so we can pick them up and we can send them back to their home countries. We've asked for that partnership. We get it everywhere else in the country, that we have Democrat and Republican leaders working with us. We wish that Minnesota could be the same.
All right. Well, we will let you get back to work. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Peter.
All right.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.